After the terrible shooting that happened at the Minneapolis, Minnesota church today, with those kids in that chapel service this morning as they were just starting the new school year, we want to address the importance of churches being ready and being prepared to be able to survive shootings. Now, there's some factors that happened around this particular shooting that would have been hard to have known in advance, but I've brought on with me again today one of our guests that we've used in the past that has been able to help us along with security and safety kind of issues, and that is Dwayne Rogers. Dwayne is a law enforcement officer. He's been trained by the FBI, been trained by SWAT, a lot of other organizations. We can put a bio down below in the description for you. You can look at it. But Dwayne, I want you to help us as we look at this particular shooting and talk about how every church in America needs to be alert, because there's some things that are coming to surface now. And again, it's still early. This just happened, earlier today. But the reality is it has been confirmed from the things that were found, a kind of a manifesto, a journal that showed that this was very anti-Christian, anti-church. So it was very much a hate crime. I believe they've designated this by the FBI as a terrorist crime, and they are pursuing that to try to explore and investigate that. But there are things that you just can't know sometimes, but churches can be prepared, and way too many churches are not adequately prepared for a situation that may come up like this, especially when it comes to responding. If something happens, what do you do in that moment? So let's start off by we're going to hit on just a couple of things real fast, and I want you to talk into this for us. Let's talk first about safety and security teams always being present when people are on the campus of a church. Hit on that for us, and then I want us to take a second and look at a map of the church that this happened at, and look a little bit at what we might see if we were trying to set up some security for that particular congregation. But help us understand how important this is to always have somebody in place.
Yes, Bobby, and thank you for having me again. It's so sad that we're back visiting this so soon after just a couple of weeks ago talking about the same issue. But yes, it's important that we prepare, and that we prepare by training for events such as what we sadly saw unfold a little over 12 hours ago now. And so the only way that we can help prevent some loss of life is if we prepare for it, if we train. And so that's today's sad incident shows all the more importance of us doing that. So to get back to what you opened up with there, it's so important in our places of worship to make sure, regardless of when it is, whether it's a Sunday morning worship service taking place, or today, as we see, is a midweek related to their school, or a Wednesday night service, or whatever. Whenever you have people on the campus other than, I guess, your basic staff, and certainly you've got to have security in place for that, at least some security items, but you need to have your security team or safety team, whatever it might be, in place, regardless of what group is having some sort of meeting on campus, because you just never know what particular group might be targeted. Unfortunately, today we saw that it was just Christians in general, a terrorist act against them, and sadly, youngsters were involved.
Yeah, let's jump over real quick. Let me pull up a map real fast. Here's the Annunciation Catholic Church, and this is where this occurred. On this map, you can see they have a fairly large campus as far as the church campus, but this occurred in basically the sanctuary church building, which is that kind of beige box or squarish, the center of the screen on the right there. And you can see that. And you see the kind of roundabout drive that's there. In this shot, we got off one of the news reports, and this is where you see those vehicles that are kind of pulled around that side of the church. And the report so far that we have are that or the reports say that the shooter was shooting through a window or windows on the side of the building. He had apparently scoped this out. They have in that journal diagrams of the building and where people would be, schedules, things of that sort. So he had plotted this out. So you never know when somebody has been in your building or has come. Maybe the best you know has just come to a Bible study or come to a worship service, but yet they're scoping out kind of what's there and you're totally unaware. One thing we're not real sure from the reports at this point if he was shooting through windows that were closed and therefore the glass was shattered. I haven't heard any reports of that per se, although it was shooting through the windows, or the windows were open. For those who don't live in the north, Minnesota is the kind of climate that this time of year it's getting really comfortable and you're not running the AC all day, that kind of thing. So it's very common for churches, especially older churches, as you see here. This is an older structure, that they would have windows that go up and down. It's not totally hermetically sealed, you could say. And so it's quite possible they had those windows up, and he knew that. He came up and started shooting through that. But let's get off that screen, and I want you to tell me real fast, highlight for us real fast, Dwayne, what are some of the areas that they needed to have had people? We haven't had any reports that there were any security present. They didn't have a security team, a safety team. We've not heard anything. The only thing I have heard reported in several different places was that they had made a request after the Covenant shooting, the Covenant school shooting in Tennessee, that a couple of days after that, they sent an email from that diocese area, those Catholic schools in that area, to the governor's office requesting some grant funds, I guess they'd call it grant funds, to be able to upgrade security for their schools and the churches in their archdiocese area. Those were denied. And so they hadn't received that, but it appears that there may not have been any other steps taken. What can you tell us about what they probably should have had in place? Again, we don't have all the information. There may have been something there, but we're kind of making some conjecture because this is applicable to churches all across the country.
Absolutely, and you're right. I don't know the details of what they may or may not have had in place, but thus far I've not read anything or seen anything that that would lead me to believe that they had a security team or some off-duty law enforcement or hired law enforcement officials on the property at that time to possibly detect something like this.
Yeah, the police did respond rather quickly. We were talking about that a while ago, but they responded within like 4 minutes, which is incredible. Of course, this is a metro area, so they did respond quickly, but 4 minutes is an eternity if there's an active shooter.
Absolutely, and we talked about that some on our previous video.
We'll link that below if somebody wants to go back and watch that. But yeah, go ahead.
Great. The importance of recognizing that you're under a threat or under an active shooter situation. The quicker you can do that, and we'll come back to that in a minute. But the quicker you recognize that, the quicker you can properly react and hopefully save lives on this. But anyway, there were several things that we've learned already. We've learned that. The shooter, Robin Westman, I believe he's been identified as. He apparently had used some boards or something to barricade some doors closed. So he at least spent a couple of minutes doing that, and then I saw a 10-year-old, I believe he's a fifth grader today, that was there inside of the chapel during the service when this all happened, and he indicated that that all of a sudden the shots were being fired through, and he used the term stained glass windows. And so whether the shooter could actually see through the windows, or the windows were open and he was able to see in and shoot there. I mean, there was no question from some of his notebooks and writings that got released early this morning before many of them got taken down. But he knew what was happening. He knew that they were in the midst of a mass or worship service or whatever, and so he obviously planned this out.
There were several hundred. So I know
Yes.
there were 17 that were injured, and some were still critical. The last I heard, 2 fatalities plus the shooter would be 3. But if there's even 250, 300 people, I don't know how many. The school enrollment was somewhere around close to 400 or something, plus faculty and that kind of thing. So there's a likelihood there were better than 300 people. If you've got that many people in a big room like a sanctuary, he doesn't have to be aiming directly at a person unless he's targeting a person. He's just shooting into the crowd and going to hit a lot of people. So that's a big deal. And let's go back on this security thing. What should they have had? And again, not knowing exactly what was there, but what kind of things, as a law enforcement officer yourself, what would you say to a church like that, as far as if you've got a group of kids on your campus during the day for a chapel service or any other time? What do you need? Where do you need to have things positioned, or people, or what are the tools you need to have available to be ready for?
But obviously, having someone monitor the doorways is a very important, and limiting those number of doorways. But having monitoring, perhaps, and again, I don't know the details, and I certainly am not going. I can't critique what they may have not have done thus far. But I can say that, based on him approaching the doorways, if someone was monitoring those, then perhaps they would have detected the shooter a little bit sooner. Another thing that is of tremendously importance, and by the way, a lot of these things are not cost-wise, are not doesn't require a tremendous investment. Just a simple camera system that would have some of the cameras trained on the parking lot, because the shooter did, from what I understand, drive a vehicle there and parked it in the parking lot. So if someone was monitoring those parking lots, even without a camera, but physically in the parking lot, perhaps they could have detected him sooner than what may have been. But
yeah, and this particular shooter, not just interrupt just a second, but this particular shooter had 3 different weapons. So he was not sneaking up. Let's put it that way. If there had been some way to see coming from the parking lot or whatever, he was not sneaking up. He couldn't be hiding these weapons, because he had multiple weapons and was intending to do great damage, no doubt.
Absolutely. And 2 of them, one was a rifle, one was a shotgun, and the other was a pistol, from what I understand. So
yeah, so 2 out of 3 are 2 or 3 are good size. Yeah.
2 of them would have been very hard to or difficult to conceal, and especially this time of the year, if somebody were concealing them with a large coat or something like that, that would have stood out. And so either have someone physically monitoring, or at least have cameras trained on the exterior areas. And so if you have the cameras there, then you can have somebody inside of your whether it's your worship center or elsewhere. It could be in an office space where somebody sits and monitors those cameras. It could be inside of a worship center, sanctuary. It's not uncommon for people to monitor those in the sound booth, or booths set up right beside there, so that they can alert someone more immediate when a threat is detected. So those are a couple of things right off.
Let me add something to that real quick. Don't just trust the guy down the street to do this. just put in a couple of cameras, you probably need to consult some professionals. And like you mentioned, I know of churches, and small churches, not huge churches that have mega budgets, but small churches. And if you have the proper kind of system, that can be monitored both in for instance, a panel of screens in an office, a church office. Even if it's a small office, they can have screens there to be able to monitor it from there. But then also, like at your sound and video booth or whatever you have in the back of the sanctuary, it could have a monitor there where you're able to see all those screens. And on top of that, if it's a good system or a reasonable system, it doesn't have to be high dollar, but you can have all that done wirelessly for your security or safety team, where they can bring it up on their phone. And they can bring up and scroll through and look at the different screens if they need to, if there's something suspicious before something really happens. All those are just pretty simple preventative things, but get a professional to come in and help you. It's well worth the little bit of money it might cost to get that done, and not just hope to have a Ring camera and nothing else, kind of a thing. Well, look, let's talk about this training, because you've hit on that a couple of times here. And I think it's really important. There's a saying that we've talked about before, and let's hit it again right now. But it's the simple training of run, hide, fight. This is something that's done by Homeland Security. They have videos. We showed that in the previous episode. They have videos of all that kind of thing. And let me do something real fast. Let's bring up the slides real fast that have these three on it. We won't go into detail on all of these, but you can look at the bullet points underneath that give you ideas. But the idea with run is, when there's an active shooter or someone in that vicinity, the first thing to do is get out of there, run. In the case of Minneapolis, he had apparently blockaded the doors with 2x4s on the immediate exits there. So even if they had started running, they may have been blocked because of not being able to get out of the building. The second is to hide. If evacuation is not possible, then find a place to hide. Wherever you are, whether it's a classroom, a sanctuary, wherever it is in your church, find a place to get down and get hidden, to hide from the perpetrator for sure. And then thirdly, if there's no other options as a last resort, and only if your life is in danger, then go to fight. Jump out and try to fight if that's the case. Add to that for us, Dwayne, help us to understand how important these three things are for us to understand as churches.
Absolutely. Just in the last 3 or 4 days, there have been a number of incidents, thankfully false reports of active shooters on a number of college campuses across the United States, from the East Coast to the West Coast, and everywhere in between. And and many of them utilize this run, hide, fight, which is this method that I like to teach, not only in higher education, but also in our churches and in the church that I happen to pastor as well. The first thing to do, run. Unless you're a trained person, armed person, whatever, that's going to respond to that active threat, then the best thing for you to do is create as much distance as you can from that person or persons that has created that threat. So run. That's why we say that at first. Run, get as far away as you can, as fast as you can, if at all possible. Again, today we know that the shooter blockaded some of the doors to prevent that from happening, and obviously he had put a lot of thought into this. He wanted to take as many lives as he could in a short period of time, and I'm not sure, something apparently interrupted that, because he was not successful in what he in carrying it out as injuring as many people as he intended to. But sadly, there were at least 17, I think, that were hospitalized, and two youngsters that were killed. So run is the first thing, and then if you can't escape that threat, then you try to hide. In a sanctuary, in a chapel, that's difficult when all you have is one large room with pews in it or whatever. That can be much more difficult. But there may be a small room off to the side or something that you can. It sounds like today that once the shots started, the shooting started, they the young people didn't have a chance to do that. And then
Well,
the
and
third,
like in the Michigan church shooting that we looked at earlier in our previous episode, you saw people in that live video. They were live streaming. They hit the floor. They just started rolling over, laying down out of the pews in the sanctuary and just hit the floor. Just get down, try to hide, get out of range of whatever's going on. So, okay, hit the last one for us, and then I want us to talk about the importance of security assessments.
Yeah, position yourself in hiding. Position yourself where the shooter, if it is, or the person that's the threat, would least likely expect it. Like you said, underneath a pew or something like that, if there's no other place. And then there's going to be times when you can escape, and you just need to be ready to resist, to fight is the word we use there, to resist however you can. And as I mentioned before, that may be picking up a hymn book and throwing it to distract the person or hit the person. It may be, if your worship center you're in uses chairs, it may be picking up a chair and throwing it or something. Anything to distract and possibly physically stop the person from carrying out their threats. Bobby, it is, I would like to note today in watching the interview of a fifth grader, I believe he was 10 years old, a young man that they were interviewing about this, that was in inside the chapel when this took place. He indicated that, he said, we didn't know what to do. We just froze. He said, we've practiced this in our classrooms, but we've never practiced it in the church. And I'm not sure if he used church or chapel, the word that he used there. But the key point there is that we need to be ready, regardless of where our groups are meeting at any time for something like this to happen. The youngster said, basically, we froze because we didn't know what to do. Well, in this case, it happened very fast, and just within a couple of minutes, the shooter got off a lot of rounds, and sadly, it struck a number of the people. But the young boy was saying, we didn't know what to do. So I'm saying that should drive home the importance of us not only planning, but practicing, carrying out this plan, even in so that we know what to do in our church services when it happened, or if we're in Sunday school hour in the Baptist churches, or whatever your church might call it, small groups. You're in classrooms. Practice it there as well, not just in one place, but in all of the places that you could be when something like this unfortunately occurred.
And I would mention, for pastors and other leaders in churches, this is something that it doesn't need to be hammered every week, but it needs to be mentioned with some frequency. And most churches, in fact, I've never been in one where it happened, where they had a fire drill or something of that sort, and it happened while people are there. People don't really think about that, but something like this might be something where there needs to be some type of a drill of some sort where you put into practice. I know it's disruptive to a worship service, et cetera, but I can just tell you that once every now and then, having a disrupted worship service because you're doing an active shooter drill or an active shooter event type drill, helping people know what to do, where to go, how to respond, that's a whole lot better than having 2 or 3 people, dead and a bunch of them in the hospital because you weren't prepared or you weren't ready or whatever. And again, that's conjecture on what happened there, or conjecture on what happened there. But the reality is we need to be prepared, and that active shooter training needs to be not just among your staff, not just among, Bible study teachers or others. It needs to be church wide. So everybody from those little kids, who are doing this in their schools, most of them are doing it in their schools. Just like that little boy said, we know what to do if it's in our classroom, but they weren't in their classroom. They were in the sanctuary or a chapel service at that point, and they just didn't know what to do at that point. Well, let's talk real fast about the importance of security assessment. What are the key things? We've mentioned this a little bit. You've already talked about the video cameras and some of those kind of things, but what are the things that you do this for churches. You help assess schools. You're trained in all this. So give us, I can't go deep, but what are some high points? What are the things we need to check off? What here, we need to make sure we check this in our church to try to be sure that we're assessing what the potential of calamity might be if something happened.
Absolutely. And Bobby, just like you mentioned a while ago, don't shortchange yourself on a camera system or something like that. To do bring in professionals. Sometimes I forget, having worked in the law enforcement and security and physical security related fields so long. I'm familiar with the camera systems and all, and a lot of times want to do that myself. But it's because I've had the experience and the background in the past. So same thing with the assessment. I would encourage you, and we talked about that and further in the video that we did previously that you put in the link in below. Once you put a team together, then that's one of the first things that you need to do is have an assessment. But you need to make sure that you involve subject matter experts in that. Reach out to your local law enforcement agency. Reach out to the local county or parish Office of Emergency Preparedness or Homeland Security or something like that, and have them, because they're going to put a team together, and they're going to use hopefully somebody in your church as well, but they're going to have people from not just law enforcement, perhaps medical and fire involved in assessing your facilities. They're going to look at your entrances and see about those. If they're set up where a person can easily blockade them like the guy did or not, but also so that you can control access into your building, or at least monitor it. And I say control it, more so monitor it. It's just like church. We want anybody that wants to come worship with us, but we want to monitor that and hopefully spot any potential threats.
And the reality is, somebody doing that kind of assessment will want to walk through with you what's your process. Like I've told you before, but I'll mention it real fast. A church I was helping not too long ago, once you kind of got into the song service, the worship service, pretty far in there, maybe 20 minutes, 25 minutes in, maybe right up before the messages to start. You've got people monitoring all the doors and your ushers and that kind of thing. But once that happened, everything's kind of settled. And one of our security guys got up. He walked the entire building. He locked down all the outside entrances so nobody could just come in and out. And then he came back around and double checked everything. Of course, they're monitoring the cameras too as they do that, but they were securing the building. So if people are, well, I'm a preacher, so if they're enthralled by the message, they're not paying attention, somebody's not going to be able to just walk in the door. They're going to have to jiggle the door if they're trying to come in and do harm of some sort. So somebody doing an assessment is going to say, okay, what's your process? What's your procedure? How do you do this? Who's responsible? Who's going to be where? All those kind of things. Those are all boxes that are important to check. Anything else? And then I want you to mention, tell us a little bit about the grant that's available through FEMA for houses of worship. But anything else you want to say on that, then let's transition.
Absolutely. And the reason for an assessment is the term that folks may have heard of before is when you're talking about potential targets for terrorist activities. We call a target could be a soft target, which means it's easy for a terrorist or somebody that desires to inflict harm on somebody. A soft target means it's easy, whereas we want to harden that target. In other words, make it harder for a person to cause bodily harm or cause other damage. Again, it's just like the young person today, the 23-year-old that committed these horrendous acts of murder and then wound up taking his own life. It was obvious that his mind was set that he was going to do this. He had been planning it out. He had written it down. He had posted things. So, but we want to harden that target up to make it not easy for that person. And that could mean making sure you have an access control system on the doors, as you mentioned, securing parts or the entire building from the outside once things get started. And then you have somebody in a foyer area or lobby or whatever you want to call it, that can monitor that and can open it up if somebody just happens to show up late for service or whatever. But they can control that. We want to harden those, make it more difficult for somebody. And so that's the whole purpose for that assessment. Look at ways, look at places that, if you have the funds, you can place cameras. Look at places where you can narrow down potential ways that a person can enter the building, or, as we saw today, potential places that a person can shoot from the outside into
do harm.
the exterior. Exactly.
Well,
so that's what assessment is. Going to look at
an
all
assessment
of that.
Could be as simple as, like, in a sanctuary, they could say, okay, and I've seen this in churches where I've worked, where we said, okay, of our safety team, we want somebody sitting in this particular place where they've got a view of that particular door or whatever. And we have people who are strategically in certain places. And I know we like to complain sometimes about, people sitting in somebody else's seat, but those people, we want to reserve a spot for them right where they need to be able to have the best view of those kind of things, without a doubt. Okay, tell us about this grant that may be available for churches and houses of worship.
Absolutely. Before we hit there, let me just say one more very important thing is that not only will you have people in places that hopefully can detect this, but you have to have a good communication system so that they can communicate that to somebody else, whether it's radios and they're using earphones and extended microphones or whatever method you're using. You want them to be able to immediately communicate that, not have to, okay, who do I need to call on my cell phone? And while the threat presents itself, if you've got to go through all of that, then you're wasting time and sadly perhaps endangering more lives. So, but anyway, yes, the United States government through FEMA has grant funding available for places of worship and other nonprofits as well, not just places of worship, but other nonprofits, for you to enhance your security to help prevent or help lessen the potential harm from an attack such as we saw today. No doubt, terrorist attack. Guy was filled with hatred, intended to do as much harm as he could do. And the good thing is that there's some funding out there available for churches and other nonprofits to try to get to enhance the security in order
to do just
prevent
what you just
lives.
said. Try to create a harder target, not a soft target.
Right.
That soft target where somebody can come in and do damage pretty easy and there's no resistance. So I'm sure there's other guidance that they have available in addition to grants as well. That's where your local assessment can come in handy about your specific building, what needs to be done there. But this would be something that you could write up and submit to be able to get a grant, to be able to enhance the ability to have a harder target as far as it may be. I don't know what all it may be available for. I'm guessing, cameras and other kinds of things, as well as possibly a consultant to come in and help with security training or something else. It could be a lot of different things, I'm guessing.
Absolutely. And like I mentioned earlier, reach out to the local agencies, because in a lot of times there's people that's already that's in place to do these, and sometimes that assessment won't cost you anything.
Right.
I know the fire department's been great about that over the years. They'll come in and do a secure or safety assessment for you for that, and help you plan if for evacuations and things like that. Well, same thing with this active threat. Sadly, in the age that we're living in most places, you'll be able to contact somebody that will come in and help you without charge to assess and to develop a plan.
Well, now, Dwayne, as we wrap it up, if I ask you that question, how fast would you react in an emergency? and you're responding for a church, what do you want to be able to say? What do you want to say? Yes, we'll respond fast because A, B, C. What is your response?
Well, first thing is, I mean, if you're asking how a person in the church should respond or how quick, then they need to be trained in order to detect a potential threat. Today, and that reminds me to go back to this. I heard a number of people say that we heard the shots, but we didn't realize that it was firearm. It was gunshots being fired.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that was the case today, that somebody didn't respond appropriately because they didn't know it, but the sooner you can recognize a threat, whether it's gunshots or anything else, the sooner you can begin responding and hopefully save injury and save lives as well.
Yeah, because I live in a metro area, so I hear a sound like that. My first thought is a car backfiring, something of that sort. I'm not thinking a gunshot necessarily right off, unless I'm in maybe a more dangerous area of the Atlanta metro area. But normally that's not the case. My first thought is, where did that car? And so it does. You have to have people alert to say you need to respond and process this. In fact, the reality is it's better to respond as though it were gunfire and be wrong than to assume that it's a backfire of a vehicle or somebody popping a balloon and be wrong, without a doubt.
Absolutely. And one of those persons that I heard say that, yeah, there was over 50 shots, and we just couldn't believe that was actually gunshots. So, I mean, even with that repetitive, and that it's not funny, and I didn't mean, but
no, I understand. Yeah, it's not connecting. Yeah,
exactly. And that's, as I mentioned in the earlier video, that's one of our problems. We want to explain something away sooner than we want to recognize it as a threat. And
right.
If we train our people to recognize it as threats, then we can respond. We can recognize it and respond quicker to that. As a law enforcement officer, or as a former, and as any law enforcement officer today, they're going to get to you as quick as you can. But I live in a rural area, and on a good day, a law enforcement officer might be 15 or 20 minutes on a good day away from our church. And so that's why we have to train our people, and we need to have teams, whether that's made up of whether we hire off-duty police officers or whatever the case might be. We need to have people trained and ready to respond in our places of worship, because we just do not know how long the response is going to be before other law enforcement officers can arrive.
Yeah. How fast do you respond to an emergency? Run, hide, fight. Remember it, memorize it, help your people know it. Just like the story you told about the little boy knew what to do in the classroom, didn't know what to do in the sanctuary or the chapel. Everybody needs to know, for every place they may be, what to do and how to do. Run, hide, fight. My guess is the classroom training was, here's what the teacher's going to do. Here's where you need to go to hide, whatever. We're going to lock the door, those kind of things in a classroom. But everyone has to understand it's to each his own sometimes in that kind of thing. And you've got to protect yourself, run, hide, and fight, no doubt. Well, Dwayne, I appreciate you joining me again tonight to help remind us how important this is for us to try to move beyond the crisis of something like this happening and try to protect our congregations and our churches the best we possibly can, without any doubt. I think that's so important. So I appreciate you joining me again tonight.
Thank you. And let me just remind again, train. If we fail to train, then we're not going to respond appropriately. Thank you, Bobby, for having me, and I'll be continuing to pray for all those involved today.
Thank you, sir. Join us next time as we continue to look for other opportunities to help your church be better and grow as you try to reach people in your community.